Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk about following the science. So that's a term that's thrown around in our society quite often now, especially with the pandemic and many other things. And I think it's a kind of a preposterous notion. So I just want to start off by saying I actually really love science. I think it's a wonderful tool that humanity has, and I really do appreciate it. I know a lot of Christian scientists that claim that science is a way that, engaging in science is a way that they worship God. They want to study about God. They want to find out how he did what he did and what he's done and what his creation really consists of. And I think that's an admirable thing, and it's benefited us so much. But this idea of following science, I think you should put, some merit in scientific discoveries. Definitely. You should base your decisions on certain things. And I think some of those have to be science. I think, you have to base your decisions on something. Okay? And, sometimes all you can go on is the current scientific data, but most of the things in the world are not tested yet. And everything we discover, we realize that for every problem we solve, we raise 20, 30, 40, 100 more questions with every study that we do. So we're not actually getting closer to knowing the truth, other than, yes, we are gaining and accumulating more and more knowledge, but we're realizing really what we're really doing is we're finding out, the more we find out, we don't know. And one of the things I want to point out about following the science is that following the science can let you down hard. And the reason I say that is that scientific data, a lot of times, is accurate. But how you interpret that data may not be. And are you getting all the data? And is the data even accurate? Sometimes studies and tests can go awry. And you get anomalies where, it just didn't work right and you can't repeat it. And so I would take and say science is a powerful tool, but it is not the end-all be-all that can tell you every single thing. It just can't. It doesn't have that power. You can't make science into a god. And a lot of times I rely on science because I have nothing else to rely on and base my decisions on in certain areas. So yes, I will turn to studies, and I think that's a great, healthy practice. But I cannot hang my entire reality on that. And especially when you have differing opinions from different studies. And so one of the things I would recommend is that everyone find out what a peer-reviewed paper is, or a peer-reviewed journal. And I would read peer-reviewed papers, and not just magazine articles or different articles on the internet or wherever you read your articles. I wouldn't read articles, just read articles that have an opinion about a scientific study. Go look at the study that it's referencing. A lot of times these articles, they're written by people with an agenda. Whether it's your agenda or my agenda or some agenda that we both disagree with, or so everybody has an agenda, and a lot of times these things are written with an agenda. And if you look back at the article, if you look back at the actual paper that was written, the article is misrepresenting their case and sometimes blatantly saying the opposite of what the people who did the study are saying. Sometimes they're just overstating the case. Sometimes they are just completely drawing conclusions out of thin air and going completely against what's written in the study, in the paper. And so I think if there's one thing you should learn in college, that's it. And continue that practice throughout your life. Because I think the world America at least, wouldn't be in half the shape that it's in right now if people learn to do that and use credible sources. And I don't mean just popular sources or sources that say they're credible. So if you go to places like CNN or MSNBC and places like that say they're credible, well, that's a lot like the coffee cup at McDonald's that says delicious coffee. If it was so delicious, why do they have to write delicious on the cup? Same thing, just because a cup says it's delicious, are you going to let a cup tell you what to believe? Same thing about an organization. If the organization says we're trustworthy and we're honorable, for one thing, if you're telling me you're trustworthy, the very first thing I'm going to do is wonder why you're telling me you're trustworthy. Like I said, I'm a very skeptical person. I've referenced that in another video. It was a long, hard road for me to get to where I could even believe in Jesus Christ and God. And it was even longer road before I gave my heart to him. But that's neither here nor there. My point is, we could all use a little healthy skepticism and check our sources. But another problem is we have follow the science right now about masks. Now, I'm not a big mask person one way or the other. I hate wearing them. I don't think they're particularly helpful, and I may get censored for that. The science shows that they can help if you wear them for like 30 minutes or less, and you never touch them. But I've already talked about this in another video. Because of the shape of my face and everything else I've got going on, my mask slides all over my face, and it's not just me. I see people with all different size, shaped heads, some with beards, some without, some, with all different hairstyles and everything, and different shaped ears and different shaped heads and different shaped chins, different shaped noses, and all of them, their masks, they're constantly trying to adjust their mask. Well, if you're doing that, and 19 out of 20 people I see are doing that. And if you're doing that, your mask is worthless. Just next to it, right next to worthless. And if you don't wash your mask every hour, well, then it's not effective. So, that's why you have some studies saying, well, masks work because they're putting on the mask and trying it for 3 or 4 seconds. Well, yeah, that works. But that's the controlled environment. That's not the environment we live in. Follow the science for global warming. We're all going to die in the next few years if we don't just get a bunch of electric cars, which the batteries are going to destroy the earth if we all go to electric cars. And we cannot produce enough windmills to actually run these electric cars. But, that's neither here nor there. Talking about science, let's be realistic for a second. Let's be naturalistic, because, when you start talking about running the whole world off electric motors, by windmill power and solar panels, you better believe in God, because it's going to take a miracle of Jesus to actually run the world off of that. But, that's just me being a realist. Okay. So if you don't believe in miracles, that's a tough pill to swallow. So look into it. If you don't believe me, look it up yourselves, but follow the science on global warming. But if you look back at the original science, look back at the early recordings, they don't have, in my opinion, I believe there is some global warming. But also, in my opinion, I don't think the science is super rock solid on that, because our initial measurements, they're too few and far between to actually be accurate. So, we're talking about 100 years worth of data, and at the very beginning, we didn't have enough measurements, I don't feel like, to be real solid science. And scientists can disagree with me and argue with me, but all I can tell you is this. I can sit here in Garland, and it could be the temperature could be 82, but we could go down to Dallas and the temperature could be 83 or 84, and we could go down to Mesquite and it could be 80, and then we could go over to Frisco and it could be 82, and so you have several different temperatures just within the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so you're telling me you've got a few little recordings of temperatures from 100 years ago, sparsely spread out, and then you want to tell me that temperature has changed a couple of degrees, and you know it for a 100% solid fact? I say, don't overstate your case. That's what I say. Don't overstate your case. Like I said, there are a lot of scientists that I respect, Christian scientists that agree with global warming, and I think there's some validity to it. But we're talking about a several degree change over 100 years. Is that going to kill us in a decade? No. Look at the science for real. Really look at the science. So follow the science has become this slogan for follow my political ideas. Don't trust anything else. Just trust what I say is true. Don't look it up. Your opinion's stupid. My opinion is actual science. But that is not true. That is not true. Really look at the science. Really look at the data. Draw your own conclusions from the data. So some instances where I think following the science is kind of absurd. So anytime you have conflicting studies, I think you're going to have issues. But let's look at evolution, for instance. A lot of good solid data, but you can interpret that data different ways. And once you look into it like I did, I think you'll come to the conclusion that I came to, that the way we interpret the data officially is maybe not always the best interpretation. Now, one thing I can show you about following the science through my research into evolution is that every time a new hominid species is discovered, it completely, absolutely rewrites the evolutionary history of humans, so-called evolutionary history of humans. I don't actually believe in macroevolution. Uh, I think, it takes more faith to believe in that than it does to believe in God. But, that's just me. So I'm not offended if you do, and I hope you aren't offended that I don't. But all I can say is look into it for yourselves, really get down to the nitty gritty, look at the strongest arguments against it, look at the strongest arguments for it, really look at the data and examine it for yourself, really look at the arguments and what they're trying to say, what the positions they're positing, and ask yourself, is this realistic? Is this believable? But anyway, every time they make a new discovery for a new hominid, the evolutionary history is rewritten completely, 100%, start over from scratch just about. So we're supposed to trust this, that changes every few years completely from the ground up. That's what we're supposed to base our lives on. I believe that's what the Bible calls building your house on sand. Okay? You're building your house on sand when you do that. Like I said, sometimes I go off of science a lot because sometimes that's my only alternative. That's my only choice when looking at a certain topic. And I think it's best to make an informed guess and base your practices off of something. But I don't put all my eggs in the basket of science. Like I said, it's a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful tool. And I love the advances and the comforts that it's brought along with it. But it is not a savior. And one of the things I love about the Bible is it hasn't changed in thousands of years. And you can trace it back, and you can look at the old manuscripts, and you can look at the original languages, and you can see that God has preserved his word, and that what he said was right 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago. It's still the same. 1,000 years into the future, it's still going to be just as correct. Now that's a solid foundation. That's building your foundation on the rock. So take science. Science, a powerful tool, a wonderful tool, but take it with a grain of salt. That's my warning to you. And anybody who tries to tell you to follow the science and they're not talking about politics, follow the science is a very political statement. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to tell you that their opinion is fact and your opinion's wrong, which is almost absurd because I haven't looked in a while, but just a year or two ago, scientists didn't even know why ice skates worked on ice. There was no scientific evidence for the understanding of ice skates on ice. It's kind of an absurd notion when people say they don't have faith, they only trust science and rational facts, but things that are proven, but nothing's proven. Nothing's proven. It takes faith to believe in science. It takes faith to believe that what you're seeing is actually true, and that we're not all just, everybody could just be a figment of your imagination, including me. You so-called supposedly have these little signals shooting up your arm, little chemical, electrical signals shooting up your arm and hitting your brain, and your brain's telling you that you're really touching what you're touching, and you're seeing what you're seeing, and you're tasting what you're tasting. But if those signals are even there, how minuscule is that? How substantial is that? Not very substantial. It's like a wisp. Okay? And so you actually, everything you see could be a dream. And when you go to sleep at night, it could be a deeper state of the dream. And so everybody you speak to could be a figment of your imagination. And there's no way you can prove that wrong. There's only one thing you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt in this world. And that's that you yourself exist, because you experience your own thoughts firsthand. So it takes faith to be a scientist. It takes faith to believe that the data you gather today will be the same as the data you gather tomorrow, and that the outcomes today are the same as the outcomes tomorrow. And that takes faith. And so every worldview requires faith. So that's my little spiel on following the science. Like I said, I'm not trying to knock science one bit. I love science, but at the same time, you gotta take it with a grain of salt. You can't make an idol out of it. All right, everybody. Until next time.
If you enjoyed this video, consider liking and subscribing to this channel. If you didn't, follow the science and like it anyway. I'll be the control.